Final Fantasy's Jecht is quite possibly one of the most underrated characters of all time, often described as a major antagonist and villain when that could be nothing further from the truth. Since its release in 2001, Final Fantasy X has captivated fans with its world-building story and widely beloved cast of characters. But of all the cast and characters, Jecht is undoubtedly one of the best. Ultimately, who you find to be the best character is subjective. However, Jecht is without a doubt the single most important character, and I don't just say that because he became Sin, although that is a contributing factor. Ultimately, the entire story of Spirit revolves around Jecht and his actions as both the unwilling antagonist and the ultimate hero. Within the story as it is told by Tidus, there are many character-building side plots, like Yuna getting kidnapped, or Yuna getting married, or Yuna's romance with Tidus, and those, of course, have nothing to do with Jecht, but the overarching direction and story of the salvation of Spira revolves entirely around Jecht and Jecht alone. Jecht as his human self and as Sin is the catalyst for both the beginning and the end of the Final Fantasy X story. But his character goes beyond just opening and closing the story. He is the very foundation for which everything is built upon.
I should be thinking about fighting Sin now anyway. Zanarkand can wait.
To understand what I mean by this, let's briefly look at the story as it is seen and told from Jecht's son, Tidus' perspective. As you are likely familiar, the story starts out with Sin destroying Zanarkand, or rather, Dream Zanarkand. As this is happening, Auron guides Tidus to Sin, who is Jecht, even though this is currently unknown to Tidus and you as the player. Auron does this so that Sin may take them both to Spira. Jecht is so foundational to the story that before this could even happen, his human character is introduced by way of the narrator Xanar. As a hero who disappeared 10 years ago, Jecht's image is also plastered on a giant building so that players can familiarize themselves with the character. The story continues and Tidus and the player eventually reach Besaid Island and learn from Yuna that Jecht is also regarded as a hero in Spira, as a legendary guardian that helped defeat Sin and bring upon the most recent calm. Tidus ends up following in his father's footsteps, not only in becoming a blitzball player, but also in becoming a guardian. Throughout his travels and tracing the footsteps of Jecht, he gradually learns more about Jecht from Auron and others, as well as from finding memory spheres along the way. Tidus and the party eventually make it to the final Aeon and learn of the ultimate sacrifice Jecht had to make to temporarily rid Spira of Sin. The story concludes when Tidus and the party meet Jecht inside of Sin and finally defeat Sin once and for all. Throughout the telling of the story to the player, as the story is given from the perspective of Tidus, Jecht is demonized as a horrible father, a drunkard, and the now incarnation of violence and evil that is Sin. Tidus had hated his father growing up, stating on more than one occasion that he had put him and his mother through a lot of hardship. Despite this, his mother would seek to mediate the relationship between the two.
But if he dies, you'll never be able to tell him how much you hate him.
The only one who initially knows of Jecht being Sin is Auron, then through Auron, eventually Tidus and you, the player, learn of this. And finally, when nearing the end, the rest of the party learns as well. To Tidus, his father Jecht really is the final boss that he must personally overcome, not only to save Spira from Sin, but to come to terms with his past childhood. As the story progresses and Tidus matures, he comes to understand that his father did in fact care for him, even if he was unable to see it as a child. With this realization, Tidus can gradually forgive Jecht. From the viewpoint the story is presented, Jecht is seen as a redeemed villain and tragic hero at best. But this narrow view of the story expectedly does not capture the big picture, as it is only told from a single individual's perspective. So just how bad or good was Jecht actually?
But I must protest. This drunkard, a guardian? Hey! You want to step in here and say that? What does it matter?
Jecht was certainly a free spirit and troublemaker, as we can see from the numerous memory spheres documenting the past journey he, Arn, and Braska took to defeat Sin. The first time Jecht had met Braska and Arn was from behind bars, with Arn pointedly calling him a drunkard. His tendency to drink would ultimately culminate in him attacking a shoe puff, which would inconvenience Braska, before he would give up drinking entirely, citing his wife and kid as the reason. Jecht is a brash and confident man, but by no means an evil person. Just the opposite. He would go out of his way to encourage Braska and Arn to fight off the Chocobo Fiend, as it was the right thing to do. From the start, he had taken to recording the spheres so that he could show them to his wife and kid. He may have been bad at expressing it, and his actions may have given the impression that he did not, but he has always cared for his family, seemingly more so than anything else. Jecht's journey would seemingly conclude when, after learning of the final Aeon, he would willingly offer his life as sacrifice to temporarily rid Spira of Sin. During this scene, Jecht comes to terms with the fact that there is no way for him to go back to his home of Zanarkand, and he will have to give up on his dream of turning Tidus into a star blitzball player. Jecht at this point has resolved himself to something greater than his own individual aspirations. Jecht's character is distinct with a unique wardrobe, his headband and lack of shirt giving him the look of a savage man with supreme confidence. But the most striking part of his appearance is the tattoo on his chest. This is the symbol of the Zanarkand Abes, a symbol Tidus also wears on his person. The symbol can be seen as a stylized J, potentially representing his name, which would not be out of character for Jecht to get his name plastered on his chest. The symbol can also appear as a T, potentially representing the bond that Jecht and Tidus share with each other. However, based on the context of the story, it would not be absurd to say that the symbol could also represent the Christian cross, as Jecht did give his life to save the world from sin, but not before declaring that he would break the cycle of sin coming back after the calm, as he laughs maniacally until the scene ends.
Trust me, I'll think of something.
Even though this may be seen as an arrogant declaration made to reassure Braska and Arn of his resolve in becoming the final Aeon, in time, Jecht would come to deliver on that promise.
You are sure?
There are some holes and questions within the plot that are not given direct explanations by the game, leaving the player to fill in the gaps. Luckily, Final Fantasy X gives us all the information we need to piece the story together. The story opened with Jecht as Sin attacking Zanarkand. After Arn briefly confirms with Jecht if he is sure of his plan, Sin takes both Arn and Tidus to Spira. But the question is, how exactly did Arn get to Spira up to 10 years ago and watch over Tidus? We know that after Braska and Jecht defeated Sin, Arn attacked Lady Yunalesca out of rage and died in the process, becoming an unsent as his convictions and duty would prevent him from going to the far planes. But how did he get to Zanarkand 10 years ago after the defeat of Sin and his later death at the hands of Yunalesca? While the exact method for this happening is not explicitly given to the player, we are given several hints throughout the story, with Arn alluding to his caretaking and subsequent involvement of Tidus as a guardian as a promise that he had made to Jecht. Sure enough, the only way for Arn to have gotten to Dream Zanarkand to watch over Tidus in the first place would be for him to have traveled on Sin, just as he had done in the opening. This is all but confirmed when Arn tells Tidus that him going back to Dream Zanarkand or not depends on Jecht. So it would follow that Arn must have gotten into contact with Jecht after his own death at the hands of Yunalesca, and as Jecht was still reforming into Sin. We are told it takes 10 years for Yu Yevon to remold the final Aeon into the armor that is Sin, and during that time Sin goes into hiding, allowing for the 10-year calm, even if it is speculated that the calms are getting shorter as evident of Chapu, Wakka's brother, having said to have been killed by Sin a year before Tidus arrives in Spira. But just because sin goes into hiding does not mean that it does not exist for that period. It is alluded to throughout the story that even after fully reforming as Sin, Jecht was able to exert some level of control over Sin, although his control was fading with time. Given this information, it would be reasonable to say that Jecht would have the most control immediately after defeating Sin. Auron's arrival in Dream Zanarkand can be reconciled if it was originally orchestrated by Jecht as he was still being remolded into the complete armor of Sin by Yu Yevon. If Jecht had control over Sin and was plotting, it would make sense that he would not stay hidden for the calm, as he had things to set in motion. This would also be when they would plot to bring Tidus to Spira, presumably to use him as the tool to break the cycle. It is somehow fitting for the borderline arrogant Jecht to be so sure of himself that he would only rely on his own offspring to be the one capable of finishing what he started. Even as Sin, Jecht is watching over Tidus as he goes through his journey, further implying he has control over the beast. It is no coincidence that Tidus was brought to Besaid, where Auron had promised Braska he would take Yuna. Throughout the story, there was only 2 incidents of Sin attacking people on a large scale, the first being Kilika and the second at Operation Mihen. We are told that whenever a city gets too big, Sin will come and destroy it. But it would seem that Jecht as Sin was preventing this while he was in control, as he did not attack Besaid, confusing the Crusaders stationed there.
If Sin's nearby, it'll attack the island for sure. But it hasn't. I wonder why.
It was only when Sin was provoked by people attacking it, as was the case at Kilika in Operation Mihen, that he lost control over the beast. It may have been a similar event as Operation Mihen that provoked Sin into attacking that resulted in the death of Chapu with the Crusaders. Perhaps the greatest example of Jecht both controlling Sin and watching Tidus is immediately after Tidus and the party defeat Lady Yunalesca. As Tidus leaves the stadium, he comes face to face with Sin and promises Jecht that even though the method of obtaining the final summoning through Lady Yunalesca has just been forever sealed, that he will somehow find a way to defeat Sin. From Tidus' limited perspective, Jecht is suffering and waiting to be freed from the bondage that is Sin, and the loss of the final Aeon may have doomed him to that fate. However, looking at this scene from Jecht's perspective, it is more likely that Jecht is watching over Tidus' actions to make sure that he too did not sacrifice himself to become the final Aeon as Jecht had done before him, as that would not have been enough to break the cycle. After confirming Tidus is still alive, Jecht as Sin leaves peacefully to wait for the plan that Tidus and the party devises. Even though he could not have known the details of the plan, it is a plan that he had been expecting for 10 years. Jecht had always had supreme confidence in Tidus, as an extension of his own supreme confidence in himself. After all, Tidus is Jecht's own son.
You'll be fine. Remember, you're my son.
Sin and Jecht have been the focal point of Tidus' story since the very start and was the focal point of the larger story of Spira 10 years before Tidus' story even begins. Thanks to Jecht's actions and foresight, Jecht and Jecht alone is ultimately responsible for bringing together the party and key resources that would act as the tools needed to defeat Sin. Without Jecht's action as Sin, Yuna's guardians would only consist of Lulu, Wakka, Kamari, and possibly Riku. Without Tidus and Auron, would Yuna have fought against Yunalesca? Even with Wakka and Lulu both readily offering themselves to become the final Aeon? There is no doubt that Tidus and his ignorance of Spira had a profound influence on Yuna throughout the story. It would not be a stretch to say that it was his influence and naive desire to have everything while sacrificing nothing that led to the party rejecting the final Aeon and resolving to defeat Sin another way.
But I want everything!
Now you're being childish.
So it seems that Jecht was right. Even though he himself did not have the tools during his fight with Sin, he did not have an airship, the backing of the people of Spira, or most importantly, the advantage of fighting a recently formed Sin with knowledge of the previous sacrifice so they might be able to exploit some weakness. Remember, it was Jecht's love of the hymn that allowed the party to pacify Sin long enough to enter the monster in the first place. Ultimately, it was thanks to Jecht's actions, sacrifice, and his confidence in his own bloodline that he was able to set the stage for his son to finish the job.
Good. That's right. You are my son, after all.
Jecht is quite possibly one of the most underrated characters of all time. After the story ends with the defeat of Sin, when Jecht, Arn, and Tidus reunite before they presumably head to the far plains, how do you think Jecht greeted Arn? My guess is he said something like,
No one else can do it. I'm the best.